IVM.
Hey everybody, welcome to another week on the IVM Podcast Network. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Paytm Money Upfront. Guys, we're heading into week 2 of the lockdown, and I'm sure it's been challenging for all of you, just as it's been for us. We're doing our best to make sure that we maintain our schedules, but beg your indulgence if we slip. In the meantime, if you're looking for more stuff to listen to, might I suggest you go dive into the archives. We've got over 6,000 episodes of content we've created over the last 5 years, and I'm sure there's something in there that you'd love listening to. Anyway, stay safe, and let me get you started with your show.
Hi, I'm Zarina Poonawalla, your peak performance coach, life coach, emotional intelligence practitioner, and NLP practitioner. I'm also the founder of Abzo Expertise Unique, and my organization constantly aims at building leaders across continents. After having worked with so many dynamic business honchos, entrepreneurs, startups, CEOs, management gurus, parents, and student communities worldwide, I am convinced that every individual has unleashed potential, and all we really need to do is realize it. Watch the magic unfold, enhance quality of life, relationships, and professions. On my show, be ready for some riveting conversations with inspirational people, snippets, stories, and much more. So here I am on this exceptional journey to find empowerment and inspiration anywhere I can. Come join me on this breathtaking path of self-realization, potential maximization, positivity, and most of all, embrace your inner power. You are on your way to empowering yourselves. Welcome to the Empowering Series with Zarina Poonawalla. On today's episode, I'm in conversation with this astute professional in the human capital domain. He loves the challenges that come with working in resourceful human minds. Please welcome human resource expert Sahil Nayar. Hi, Sahil.
Hi, Zarina. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. After a long wait, we're finally getting into this conversation. I'm really happy about that for now.
Absolutely. Pleasure is all mine.
Great. So how's the lockdown treating you?
It's quite unprecedented, right? None of us ever imagined almost a month ago that we're going to be in a space like this where we're going to be sitting at home and working. Work from home was something we all heard of in the past. It used to happen in pockets,
right.
but situations like these really help. And there's this joke going viral saying, if you do a poll and ask who really made work from home possible, is it the CEO? Is it the chief technology officer? But actually, no, it's the situation on hand that's really got each one of us to work from home.
Literally. We were supposed to do it in the studio.
Exactly. We were supposed to do this recording in your studio, and here we are doing it online. So
absolutely. We're working from home, both of us.
Absolutely.
But, honestly, I never imagined having to witness something like this, at least in my lifetime. We've always heard of everybody, the families talking about, the elder generation talking about world wars and how bad they were and what they've seen, the blackouts and whatnot. But we have stories to tell now, and really interesting ones, because the whole world going into a lockdown altogether and everybody having to do what they're doing currently is very astonishing and quite miraculous. I'd never imagined something like this in my lifetime.
Yeah, absolutely. I think history is in the making. And as you rightly said, the way we conduct ourselves in these times is what will get put down into the books of history of how we, not only as India as a country, but the larger world responds to unprecedented times like this. We've, as you mentioned, we've heard of stories of warfare, we've heard of stories of famine, we've heard of stories of people actually getting hit. But a situation like this where social distancing has taken center stage and freedom, which is one of the most important aspects of human behavior, is actually being curtailed in a confined space, is bringing out different personalities of different individuals in these times.
It absolutely is. And in fact, I was wondering, do you think people around you are coping well with the crisis?
So let's take a couple of step back, Zarina. If you look at it, these are absolutely unprecedented times. We haven't heard of something like this earlier. And
Sure.
everyone is reacting very, very differently. We've seen them on news channels, different parts of our country. We've seen practical realities on the ground on how people are away from their homes, how daily wage earners, one strata of society,
Right.
is significantly hit, right? You know, you and I are sitting in the comfort of our homes. We get 3 meals a day,
Absolutely.
but there are people out there who are even struggling to get 3 meals a day. I would just
Right.
suggest,
Even one on the table, actually.
absolutely. So I would just suggest to all your people who are going to be listening to this podcast that it's extremely important that we remain calm for starters, because in case we don't exhibit a great level of calmness at this point in time, we can not
Mm-hmm.
just blunder for ourselves, but we can also compound the problem at hand for others. Because as we all know, uh, a virus
That's
of
so
this sort can actually not just impact you, but also
true.
impact your near and dear ones. And if this gets into a community kind of spread, it's going to really be disastrous for us as a country. So it's extremely important that we be calm,
I know.
we don't blunder, and more importantly, play our role in flattening the curve.
True. I think what is important currently is for every individual to realize their responsibility as citizens, because you're human carriers of this virus. And the one thing you can definitely do is make sure that you are not responsible to add to the constant threat which is around us currently.
Absolutely.
How do you reckon this whole situation is impacting us psychologically? Because naturally, people aren't used to social distancing, people aren't used to isolation. Even work from home, as much as people were dying to work from home at one point and wanted their weekends to be really long and never end, I guess people are hoping that, suddenly everything just changes and they can all go back to their office spaces. So, what do you think is the take on our psychological aspect?
No, I think that's a very, very important aspect you've touched upon, because while the
Mhm.
world has changed in the last month or so, what is important is that we need to understand how do we feel when we apply ourselves. And what do I really mean by that is most of us are glued into our television channels. We're seeing what's happening around us. We are picking up data.
Right.
We're analyzing a lot of stuff. And in the process, without realizing, we're actually overthinking all of this. And therefore, the way we call it WhatsApp University is also propagating a lot of
Yeah.
fake news. And one needs to be very careful that we don't hit the panic button, but at the same time, we are well informed of what is happening
Mhm.
around us, because clarity always infuses confidence. It's important to be aware, stay indoors, stay safe. But at the same time, what's happening is while this kind of advisory may sound good to the ears, what really touches
Mhm.
the heart is the fact that there are various emotions that each one of us are actually going through. A lot of people who have a lot of
That's
money
right.
can't spend that money today. They can't go to the
Mhm.
various five stars and the various food joints that they would end up doing. I have so many friends who eat out almost 3 to 4 times a week.
Mhm.
And today, when they have to have basic food at home, it is becoming a challenge. In the whole space that we work in, we know people who cover almost 5 to 6 cities in 3 days because their work takes them places and they're always on the move. And today, they are curtailed to their households. So, what all of this does, Zarina, is actually
Mhm.
it puts you in a flux, because on one hand the logical part of your brain empathizes with people who are on the front line trying to battle out the entire virus and support and save lives, and it makes you feel very
Right.
blessed, that you're blessed because you have your meals, you have your house. All that you need to do is not contribute in the spread of the virus by social distancing. But also, on the other hand,
Yeah.
while you have that level of empathy for people on the front line, On the other hand, because of your own lifestyle that each one of us has lived all these years, this social distancing is actually playing on our emotions. And we're not able to come to terms with those emotions.
That's right.
And therefore, that leads to a lot of manifestation of other emotions which otherwise might not appear logical. And therefore, my suggestion is it's extremely important that we be aware of these emotions, stay in touch with our emotions, and try and process them in a manner that the logical side of our brain, which is our, the intelligence quotient, finds a balance with the emotional quotient so that we are able to tide through this period comfortably without aggravating the problem.
True. Actually, that's very well said, Sahil, because I've been coming across people, and as a coach, you'll end up having conversations with people on the current situation. And two things that I've learned from this particular process of distancing and isolation and working from home is that, let's assume if our government or the world had announced very clearly that, you know what, we're paying you and we're going to look after you, and you just have to sit home and do nothing, or you have to work from home, then people would have considered this a little bit of a party, which they anyway, some of them are, which is silly. But, I just feel what people need to do is, if somebody is going to ask me, how are you coping with the whole lockdown? My usual response is, I'm too privileged to complain about it. Extremely privileged. I have a home, I have my meals, there's comfort, there's little work happening here and there. So there's literally nothing to complain about. The only thing we can do is help those who literally have a problem at this particular point in time. Like you mentioned, the have-nots. They really need help. And it's so difficult to imagine daily wagers having to literally think about what they're going to bring to the table every single day and whether they can feed their families or not. And not only during this whole process, but even post this whole process. The economy is going to get slightly hit. And I believe we're too far ahead to consider nipping the problem in the bud, at this particular point in time. So what is it that organizations and people around us can actually do to make sure that things aren't escalated, apart from the social distancing and isolation?
Yeah, so Zarina, India Inc. and economists around the world have already started blueprinting various scenarios, right? Given that we are almost 2 weeks into this now, full-fledged, BCP, which is business continuity planning, is already in place for most organizations. The basics of getting IT infrastructure, to work, which were initial teething issues, have been sorted. The challenges around getting people glued in on engagement, on getting them connected, on trying and maintaining business as usual is what most organizations are focusing on. But the larger question that is before us is how will we tide through these times? Because forget a month or two later, none of us even know whether the lockdown is going to get lifted or not, or whether it's going to be extended. That's the conversation that most people are having right now. The larger conversation is if this continues, for how long will it continue? How is it going to impact revenues of organizations, sales, the bottom line? And the larger question still, Zarina, remains is once we start getting back to normalcy, how disciplined are we going to be about the whole comeback? Because we've seen this where we've
Oh,
got a little
yes.
bit of freedom on maybe on the 22nd of March or otherwise. A lot of people fail to understand basic instructions that our prime minister has been saying. Yeah, he's been saying, go out to your
Yeah.
balconies, stay in your house. And here we see processions of people, huge gatherings of people coming out on the road and tali bajawing and thali bajawing and lighting diyas and so on and so forth, right? So once the lockdown is lifted, I just hope India Inc. gets it straight and the entire process of going back to work is done in a very disciplined, systematic, and phased out manner.
I agree.
Absolutely agree. Because it's not only, I mean, I've been talking to friends abroad, and every country is literally facing a whole lot of stupidity other than the virus. A stupidity of people not just understanding what the need of the hour is, and people going out of their way to actually cause trouble. Because this is going out of the way, like you mentioned, what the Prime Minister is telling us to do, as opposed to what people are actually misconstruing it as, and then taking steps accordingly. I really hope and pray that there is a disciplined level after this is over, which like I said, hope and pray, but I am a little skeptical about it. Considering people will just probably, barge into restaurants and get out on the streets and pretend like it's a big party, because right now it's not a party. We are supposed to be scared. And if we are scared, we will respond accordingly. People thinking that it's not going to happen to me, right, is not the way to deal with this particular problem. And I think that's the phase we're in to some extent.
No, you're absolutely right. Because, see, Zarina, the way we look at it is while we speak to friends overseas, one thing that makes me absolutely proud as an Indian is majority of our country has been locked down, apart from a few people moving out in the streets. And of course, the civic authorities and the police are ensuring that only people who have genuine reasons to move out are moving out. But I think the lockdown by itself and the decision to lock down a country of 130 crore people is a brilliant move by the government. We've seen other nations, other countries who still not been able to achieve a lockdown in spite of the fact that their numbers are significantly rising. So that's point number one. Point number two,
Yes.
while you and I may maintain social distancing because we have the luxury of maintaining so, a lot of people who stay in 10 by 12 chawls or juggies or small hutments, like you call them, don't have the luxury of social distancing. And therefore, while it is
True.
a grave situation, I would not want people to panic, but I would still want people to understand and maybe create awareness. Like so many states' chief ministers are actually talking to a lot of people on various social media channels in local languages so that people get it and people understand that even though they may not have the luxury of social distancing, they are a lot more prone to and susceptible to the virus and consequently spreading the same in high density zones. And therefore, if each one of us don't understand this and don't help each other, we're just going to complicate the problem for ourselves and for everyone around us.
I completely second that. And maybe in times like these, one of the words that comes to mind is resilience. Whether it is from the top of food chain or going back down to the strata of society, whatever it is and whoever it is at this point in time, everybody needs to build resilience, right?
Absolutely. And I think not just resilience, but also empathy. Because
Oh,
while we
yes.
build resilience for ourselves, there are a lot of people on the front line. There are a lot of people who are in the middle of it, fighting it while we sit in the luxury of our houses. And even while we work, it's not just about building empathy for healthcare workers or doctors or nurses. If we are able to contribute to their cause, fantastic. But if not, even to people around us, because let's be cognizant of the fact that each one of us have different thresholds. We deal with anxiety in various different ways. And therefore, in moments like these, my call out is going to be that there are two things that we do. One is what we say, and one is how we say it. And therefore, this is a moment for us to be very conscious. And as I said earlier on, be in touch with your emotions, be in touch with emotions of people around you, but be extremely conscious of how you say what you say, because that can end up having a large impact on people, on their abilities and their sensitivities. And that's extremely important.
I believe, in a way, you have to sensitize yourself and the words. And I think compassion, having a lot of compassion at this point in time. would really help, because if you're compassionate, you'll understand the importance of human life, and you will take steps accordingly, and you will help others take steps accordingly in this situation.
True that.
Do you think this is going to have massive effects, considering you're a human resource expert? I believe this would be your domain to answer. Job cuts, crunches maybe in financial crunches in organizations, and what is your take on the recovery time for these things?
So see, if anyone tells you today that they can predict how tomorrow is going to look like, I would, I would myself love to hear from that person, because there is not much that one can really predict far into the future. A lot of organizations today who understand this are typically deferring the whole decision-making process. People who are sitting on high cash reserves and afford the current situation are doing well to protect their people. There are a lot of organizations, we've seen that with the government, where ministers have taken a pay cut and people higher in the chain are taking pay cuts so as to ensure no job losses for their teams and their people. But at this point in time, what one needs to do is to be able to sit back and think of alternate channels of revenue, of ways and means that one can go to a market, build a go-to-market strategy so that firms who were not in markets earlier or organizations that were not completely penetrated, once this lockdown opens up and we start returning to normalcy, how do they really build different domains where they can earn revenue from? At the end of the day, everyone's doing business, and if revenue doesn't come in, how are you going to afford cost? So I don't think there's a clear-cut answer right now. I think it's all about wait and watch. Economists across the world have various permutations, combinations, and theories around which it is important, and they're recommending that economy should start moving, even though at a slow pace. Trade should happen in a conservative manner. But while essential services is being moved out, we also need to look at how other things are in place so that not just essentials, but over a period of time, as the situation comes under control, we start fueling the economy to get it back and revive it back. Let me give you a classic example. Most of us over a period of time have moved from our local kirana wala to Amazons and Flipkarts of the world because of sheer convenience, that we can do a lot of e-commerce, we can do a lot of payments online, and stuff gets delivered to our house at our convenience. Today, when these large organizations are unable, and again, now recently they have started, but initially while they were unable to send stuff across, we all resorted back to the kirana wala, right? What is the learning for that kirana wala?
Exactly.
The learning for the kirana wala is this just a moment when people are coming to me because I am available? Or when life returns back to normalcy, these same customers will continue coming to me? And therefore, what can a kirana wala do differently to capitalize on this moment and make you a customer for life? And you will notice that local kirana walas who do that in these times reflect on those things, that what are the comforts that a customer needs that will ensure that this customer continues coming to me even after the lockdown are ones who will be able to not only sustain but even grow and expand.
Wow. I love that. That is very positive and very motivating, and it's a little gleam of hope, And I really hope that people pick up on some of these nuances and actually try and find themselves creating new avenues for them, instead of looking at this as something where everybody's spiraling down.
Right. And I actually think, Zarina, this is so ironic, right? When we are so busy and we are so stuck up with our work and all of that, we keep making a bucket list of things we want to do, and we end up chasing that bucket list.
Oh, yeah.
And now when we are in the zone where we have some time on hand because we're saving on travel time, so on and so forth, many of us are unable to chase the bucket list, which can be achieved by staying indoors, be it staying fit, be it pursuing our hobbies, be it spending quality time with family. We're just not doing that, right? We're still stuck onto our phones. We're still stuck onto looking at our own television channels in our own respective bedrooms. But why are we not taking the time out? And I think this is a great moment for us to pause and reflect on how are we feeling, what are our emotions, how are we reacting to the ecosystem, and more importantly, spending time chasing a couple of those aspects on our bucket list, which can be achieved in the current situation.
Absolutely. So how are you keeping yourself mentally and physically fit and chasing your bucket list, so to say, currently?
Oh, that's a nice question. I didn't know it was going to come back to me, but so I'm doing two or three things. One is because of my hectic schedule of
Okay.
travel, which every weekend I would spend time at some college or the other across the country and keep boarding flights from one city to another. That has stopped. So that allows me a lot of time on weekends, spending time with my dad and my mom. Which I always wanted to, but I would end up traveling a lot. Now I take a couple of sessions online on Zoom. So that saves a lot of travel time to other cities.
Okay.
Second is we've pretty much blurred a weekday from a weekend. And therefore, I've consciously made an effort. The initial couple of days were about being in front of my laptop for almost long periods of time. So now I've consciously tried to put in a routine where it's not just work from home, it is also work for home.
Yeah.
I feel guilty of all these years not contributing to the house because I knew my parents and the house help and the maids would take care of it. But basic things, it may sound frivolous, but basic things like keeping my clothes back in place, ensuring that I wash my utensils after every meal, ensuring that I do the sweeping and the swabbing. These are small things that have actually helped me discover another side of me which I never thought I would ever do. Right. So, with our local help not coming to work,
Right.
we've divided responsibilities at home, and playing these roles also brings out a very different side to me. And I'm actually enjoying that part alongside with working from home for all that we do for our clients and our people.
But that's a good way of keeping yourself busy, and I hope people take a page out of your book on this one. I like what you said. It's not just work from home, it's also work for home. That was brilliant.
Yeah, and I think so. We spoke about resilience earlier on, Zarina. I think,
That's right.
as a country, most of us are not resilient by choice. We become resilient when the situation demands us to be resilient, right? And therefore, my appeal to everyone is really going to be when you sit back, spend a couple of moments a day just being in touch with yourself and being in touch with your emotions, because unless you don't process that, you may try and keep yourself busy with work, you may try and exhaust yourself with household chores, but ultimately it are those same emotions that really play back and manifest themselves into your actions. And unless you don't spend enough amount of time doing that processing, you will end up getting frustrated, you will feel fatigued, you will feel irritated, you will want to break free. As you mentioned earlier on, rebellious streaks will start surfacing. And therefore, two things is what I would put on the table. One is look within. Two is dedicate some amount of time to prayer. Personally speaking, I've been very religious as well as spiritual, but I would never take time out to go to a temple. Today, I think the temple is the conversation that I have with God. I don't need a physical place to have a conversation. Just 5 minutes of closing my eyes, sending out a prayer for everyone who's contracted the virus, for them to heal, for them to get well soon, for their families. It's just about sitting and empathizing. Think of a situation where you're quarantined away from your family. Your family doesn't know what's happening to you in that hospital. Doctors, nurses are treating you in that hospital, and you are away from your family, right? It's an extremely difficult situation to be
I
in.
know it's
And the
dreadful.
moment you empathize and offer a prayer, it just gives you a lot of strength, because you're able to tide through that situation. You're able to empathize with people who are going through a lot more difficulties than you are. And then hopefully, with everyone's prayers, with all the good work that's happening by the legislature, by the state government, by the central government, and by each one of us,
Mm-hmm.
we will emerge out of this much stronger.
I believe that completely because, to be honest, it's a very dreadful situation to even imagine yourself in. Something suddenly hits you. You have no family. You have nobody of your own. You don't know if you'll get through this. And, the doctors, nurses, the frontline workers are all out there for you, but you're all alone and you don't know what's on the other side for you. So it is extremely dreadful to be in that situation, and a little prayer is quite helpful. I
Right.
believe if all of us have a little, a little blessing here and there, and all of us can just literally pray for everybody to heal and the situation to heal quickly, and also learn from what we're going through, things will just change entirely.
Absolutely. So, Zarina,
Hmm.
how is this really playing out for you? I know you've really continued with work, you're managing stuff, but what is this moment? How does this moment make you feel, and how are you coping with that feeling?
To be honest, like I said, I'm feeling extremely privileged. Uh, as a person, I believe in social distancing anyway, so that part hasn't been very difficult for me. And apart from that, I'm getting to usually. I'm a person who's basically always been very hands on in the house, so nothing's really that different for me except that I know I can't get out. That's it. Everything else is just the same. So I'm looking after my plants, I'm cooking, I'm cleaning, I'm doing my video sessions, I'm doing my audio sessions, I'm doing a couple of recordings with lovely people like you. So, there's constant motivation, there's constant inspiration. You're looking around and you realize that there's so much to be blessed and feel fortunate about. And if you don't realize it in this particular moment and in this particular phase of your life, you will never ever come to that realization. I mean, this is the worst thing that could have happened to mankind in a way, in at least, like I said, the past few years that we've been noticing. We've never come across something like this. And I believe we won't even in the future. This is a once in a lifetime experience. And a once in a lifetime experience of adversities of this level have a lot of opportunities for those who can see it and for those who can actually claim them. It's going to be a life changing experience and not necessarily a bad one. Not necessarily a bad one. So, to be honest with you, I'm not looking at this as a lockdown. I'm looking at this as living up, just living it up as much as I can. And of course, trying to help people. You're trying to make sure that the wages that you've had at home, your staff, the help around you, the security, people who are cleaning the area, your society, you try and be of help to them, try and make sure that everybody has food to eat, everybody has rationing. So you're doing a little bit for society. At the same time, you're making sure there's enough time to introspect and reflect and build your relationships. If you're sitting at home, you have the privilege of sitting at home, then you have the time to build your bonds. You have the time to enjoy meals together, do things together, work from home and whatnot. There's so much one can do. So I'm living it up actually, Sahil. That's how I look at it.
Beautiful. I think I really like this tagline of flipping it around from a lockdown to living it up, right? That's really beautiful.
Yeah. All right. So we've come to the end of our segment, and I'm really thoroughly enjoying this conversation. And I'm already telling you on record, Sahil, that once we can get back to studio, we are still going to have you for another conversation. I'm already telling you that.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
So I want to know, Sahil, as your, parting words on our episode today, what is it that empowers you?
So, Zarina, the way I look at it is, and as you mentioned briefly earlier on also, it's all about what's the mindset that each one of us adopt in a situation like this. Of course, there will be anxiety. Of course, there will be the fear of the unknown. Of course, in uncertain times, with the fear of what tomorrow will present, there will be challenges. One choice that we have is to get bogged down by all of this. And the second choice that we have, which can actually make us feel a lot more empowered, a lot more happy, is to look at our mindset in a very positive way, to have an attitude of gratitude for all the people out there who are in the middle of fighting this virus, praying for them, their safety, and their success as a lot of them build a vaccine for this virus. Closer back in our communities, in our office spaces, being empathetic to people, dealing with them in a manner which is a lot more understanding, a lot more gentle, a lot more soft, because they're also going through it alongside with you. And lastly, the closer back home, your immediate family, your people in your vicinity, in your building, your relatives, your friends, your family. Pick up the phone, have a chat, share some good news, share some positivity, reminisce old memories where you've had a good time, and keep the positivity around. I think in this moment, while we build resilience and empathy, two things that are foremost important, but at the same time, keep the positivity alive.
That was fantastic, Sahil. I think you're absolutely right. If people can be positive and have the right attitude towards this current situation, we'll all triumph out of this. And we'll do that hopefully very soon.
Great, Zarina. It was wonderful chatting with you and looking forward to being in touch with you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for your valuable insights and so much for your time. And hopefully we'll see you soon post this lockdown. Until then, be safe and be well and be empowered.
Thank you so much. Wish you and your team, Zarina, all the very best.
If you liked this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcast.com. You can also follow us on our social media. We are at IVM Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram.
How many times have you motivated yourself to improve your sleep or lose weight or be more productive? How many times have you failed? Hi, my name is Ashton Doctor. Tune into my show, The Habit Coach Podcast, where we focus on creating small, tiny habits to improve your life instead of those big, impossible tasks. So make listening to me a habit every Monday, Wednesday and Friday on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcast.com or on your favorite podcasting app.
Sachin Tendulkar, Virat Kohli, Don Bradman, and now Cyrus Brocha. Okay, probably not in the right company. I mean, Don Bradman is Australian. But it's called Cyrus Says, a wonderful show about everything. Find the show on the IVM Podcast app, ivmpodcast.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Cyrus Says is brought to you by Storytel.